Hey there, and happy holidays. I wanted to let you know that this episode you're about to listen to is a replay from last year, which is why you hear the reference of 2024. But the content is so good, I wanted to keep it, and it is equally relevant. All of the questions are the same that I do every year, and I highly recommend that you do too. I also wanted to tell you I have a praise report that Chris, my husband, got a kidney transplant this year. So when you listen to the episode, you'll hear me talk about the fact that that was a disappointment from last year. And now I can celebrate that he got a kidney on April 6th, 2025. Wishing you all of the best to reflect on 2025 and lean into 2026 and what you want to create. Enjoy this episode. Today's episode is all about having your best year yet. We are winding down here towards the end of the year, and this is something that I do as a workshop, and I have done it myself for almost 20 years now at the end of every year. And these questions that I have now adapted come from a woman named Jinny Ditzler, who wrote a book called Your Best Year Yet. And what I'd recommend that you do with this episode is to listen when you have time to pause it and answer the questions as I'm walking through them. Obviously, it's up to you to decide how you want to work with this, but it is such a wonderful exercise that I have found so enriching to look back and also look forward at the following year. So we're going to look back at your year this year and then focus on 2025 being your best year yet. So the first thing that I'd suggest you do in this process is to celebrate. What did you accomplish in 2024? Make a list of those things. So for example, maybe you hiked the Grand Canyon. Maybe you were consistent in a daily morning routine. Or perhaps you got a promotion at work. There could be a multitude of things. And what I would suggest that you do is really give yourself time to do this. And the way that I've worked with this whole process is I start it on one day and I just brain dump everything that comes to mind. And then I pick it back up again. Sometimes it's a week or two later. And then once I have it where I feel like, okay, I'm really happy with how I answered these questions, then I check it mid-year the following year and see how am I doing? Am I on track with all of these questions? But our first one is to celebrate. What is it that you've accomplished? Or what are the things that you say, wow, I'm really, really proud that that happened and that I did that? What are the things that you took ownership of, you took responsibility for and did? So that is the number one thing I'd recommend you do. So this would be a good time to pause and take some time to do that. Now, for some of you, it can feel overwhelming to try to what, do I sit down and just do this for hours and hours? No, it could be even setting a timer for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, brain dump those things. And here's the other thing I would suggest: be proactive. If you have been in my community for long, you know that I talk about a celebration portfolio, which is to make a list of all of your accomplishments, a running list, as well as your character qualities and character strengths about yourself. In addition, keeping a folder, whether it's an electronic, like maybe screenshots, but a folder of testimonials or compliments that people have said about you. It is great to keep all of that in one place because, first of all, it's a lot easier at the end of the year to go back to this list rather than trying to think of, oh, okay, I got to go back to January and then think about all of these things. It can feel a little overwhelming when we do it like that. But either way, take some time and celebrate the things that you've accomplished. And if you would like, email me. Karen@KarenLaos.com. Laos is my last name. I would love to hear what you're celebrating. Shoot me an email and let me know. This is also one of the things that I do in my community called the Powerhouse. We celebrate a lot. I also do Celebration Fridays with my team, where on a voice memo app called Voxer, we share a win that week. So when we can get into the spirit of celebrating, it not only helps us feel more confident, feel warm and fuzzy, frankly. It is a very positive endorphin kind of feeling when you celebrate your wins. And it's also amazing because you inspire other people to celebrate theirs. Lots of reasons to celebrate. It's also important to keep in mind that we have all of these celebratory milestones in our culture, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. You think about just the different religious holidays that there are too, and the different holidays that exist in different countries. There's so many different ways that we have milestones to celebrate. Weddings, all kinds of things. All right. So that's what I'd suggest you do. Pause and write down some of those wins. The next question is to ask yourself, what fun things happened? I remember one year, and I would look at this as what's something that's unexpected that happened. I remember one year where I didn't expect that I was going to be taken around in Thailand by a wonderful person that I had met at a training about a month prior. And I'll never forget when I was being taken around by his HR team, and they all of a sudden, after we had gone out for coffee, after they had shown me around to different sites, they said, "Oh, Miss Karen, have you ever ridden an elephant?" I said, "No, I definitely have not." And they turned the car around and they put me on an elephant. So that's an example of a fun thing that happened. Now that's a bigger story than probably, or I mean, it doesn't have to be that unique. But what fun things happened this year for you? This could be maybe you met somebody unexpectedly. You went on a trip and you had a really amazing time meeting somebody that you never would have thought you would have met, or maybe you had an experience that was different. So think about what fun things happened for you and write those down. The next one, this is where we get into a little bit more of the negative reality, but it's important to face negative realities because they happen. It's life. What were your greatest disappointments? Take a moment to think about that. What happened that really bummed you out? And this could be something big or it could be something small. Just again, get this out of your head. Just throw it onto a piece of paper or type it on your computer and figure out what those things were. I know for my journey with my husband, one of our greatest disappointments last year was him not getting a kidney before the end of the year. We were praying and praying and praying that that would happen, and it did not. So we continue on the journey, but have faith that he will get a kidney at some point, hopefully sooner than later. Now, you may not need a kidney, and that's a big disappointment that you didn't get one. It could be something even like, wow, I really went for this opportunity and I didn't get it. I remember it was a couple of years ago now, applied to do a TEDx talk in Minneapolis, which is where I'm originally from. And I was so excited to get a call back. It felt like this is happening, had the greatest interview, and then it didn't work out. Now, that was definitely a disappointment. So that was something that I had to sit with and grieve. And that's also a really important thing to do too, that I would recommend when you have a big disappointment, take the time to acknowledge that it happened, and then make the time to talk about it with somebody. It's also really helpful sometimes, kind of like as we're writing down these disappointments, sometimes it's helpful to do a loss inventory. And that's just writing down everything that you feel that has been a loss in your life, or even for that past year, or that past month. Take a moment to jot those things down and read it to somebody. It can be very helpful. Grief is best. It's the healing around grief is accelerated when you actually share it with someone. So these are some tips for you around how to deal with those disappointments. Some of you may know that the disappointment around the TEDx talk, I have to share how that turned around because I do think that this is a really powerful story about what can happen. So after grieving for the day, I was really sad about that, of course. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to be in Minneapolis visiting, and I'm going to reach out to the interviewer because she and I had grown up about 4 blocks from each other. She used to deliver my mom's paper. We had such a strong connection that I thought, I'm going to reach out and ask if she wants to have coffee. Well, we had coffee, and then one thing led to another, and she ended up saying, I think you need to be one of our speaker coaches. And I had to jump through a few hoops to get to that point, but I did. And then they nominated me to be the MC of the entire event, along with my wonderful colleague, Paulette. So you never know what can happen. But that is an example that for me was just a divine appointment, because a lot of times we don't know I would argue we don't know what's best for us. That God, for those of you that are faith-filled people, I definitely look to God to go, okay, how are you guiding me here? And a lot of times the answer isn't always what we think or what we want it to be, but then it is often even greater and better than we expected. So that was definitely the case in this TEDx scenario. All right, so take a moment to write down your greatest disappointments. The next question is, what did I learn? What did I learn? This is a great time to bring up failure. A lot of times we look at our mistakes as failures or as things that we wish hadn't happened. And I would imagine that if you're like most of us, our failures or the challenging times are when we actually learn the most. And that's really powerful. So think about, what are the things that you learned this year? I learned this year that online, generally speaking, is not where I want to put my energy anymore. Specifically, online marketing, Facebook ads, all of these things in the digital space. I have an online course that's available for people to purchase if they want to, but it is not something that I'm advertising. And I realized this just a few months ago when I went to an in-person event, and I was reminded how, wow, there are in-person events that are local and they're really awesome. They're incredibly energizing. And people come up to me and we have great conversations. And I realized this is where I need to be focusing, not spending so much money and time and marketing myself online. So that's one of the things, the biggest things I learned this year. How about you? What did you learn? Take a moment to pause and write that down. The next question is, what intention will make me most successful in 2024? This is a powerful one. And when I talk about intention, it's what is the thing that you are going to put your focus and your energy toward? What will make that most successful? So maybe, for example, it might be quiet time, silence, time on your own, time to yourself, and not saying yes to so many commitments socially. That's just one example. It could be the opposite. Maybe you have stayed in too much and you haven't been as social as you would have liked to be. And therefore, your intention is going to be, I'm going to be more social this year. It could simply be, I am going to do everything I can to have peace in my life this year. That is my intention. And all of my decisions will be filtered through the lens of, is this contributing to peace in my life or not? So that's what I mean by intention. And I would suggest you pause this and think about that for yourself. And this would be, by the way, now thinking forward to 2025. The next one, many of you probably have a word for the year, and think about what is one word that's going to be your focus in 2025. I'll tell you, I've had multiple over the years. I've done this for a long time, like I mentioned already. I remember when I left corporate, I think my first year in 2020, it was something like expansion. And then it was explosion the next year. It's got to be something that energizes you, that makes you excited, that is a positive thing. And this is directly in line with your intention. And some people don't even bother with intentions. They just say, my one word is going to be both my intention and my focus. And I haven't decided what mine is going to be yet for next year. Otherwise, I would share that with you. But think about what that is for you. I've heard so many over the years. I remember somebody recently said acceleration. One person said faith. What was another one? Delight, peace, trust. It's all about whatever word you feel is going to energize you that you want to focus things around. It's very similar to values. I will never forget when I first got married. I remember I asked my husband, what do you want our home life to be like our values? And he said, I want it to be peaceful, safe, and fun. And I took a moment. I thought, peaceful, safe, and fun. I like that. So I remember one time when we were having a difficult situation with our neighbor. And I remember Chris said to me once after we were going back and forth with her, he said, is this contributing to our value of peace in our home? And that was a huge reminder of no, it wasn't. We needed to change course. We needed to let that thing go. And I'll tell you, the peace came rushing back after we made the decision to let that go. So this is a great example around the word that you want to choose that's going to help you to focus. Those are the main questions. I want to give you some bonus questions that can be really helpful. And some of these Jinny Ditzler really zeroed in on in her book, Your Best Year Yet, if you want to pick that up. How do I limit myself and how can I stop? If I were to answer this question, this is a vulnerable thing for me to share, but it is about me staying up too late at night. And then by the time I get up in the morning, I am way behind because I'm in the West Coast. And if I get up at 8 or 9, then the rest of the world on the East Coast is already in their midday, and that sometimes causes problems. So I think that limits me sometimes. And so how can I stop? Well, this is another thing about limiting, that I don't have a very consistent morning routine. And I would love for that to be better. I do think that that limits me sometimes because sometimes I wake up and I think, oh, maybe I'll go work out or maybe I'll do it later. And then it can cause more brain cells to be working when we have routine. There's a reason why routine is so great, because we don't have to think. We just go do it. The other one is, what inner qualities would I like to nurture? Some of you may have heard of the book, and he's got a whole app for it too. His name is Shirzad. I forget his last name, but it's Positive Intelligence. And this idea of stopping to really nurture the peace within us through focusing. And one of the very specific techniques of positive intelligence is to focus on something for like even 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. It could be rubbing your fingertips together for that amount of time, and all you're focusing on are your fingertips. Or you're sitting and noticing the sounds around you, and all your brain is focused on are the sounds around you. That can be a very helpful exercise to nurture those inner qualities of peace and limit or avoid altogether anxiety. Next one is, what external outcomes will demonstrate that these inner qualities are deepening? This is a deep question. I'll say it again. What external what external outcomes will demonstrate that these inner qualities are deepening? So for example, if I am deepening my inner peace, I will be less likely to react in a situation where I wouldn't have, or I would have reacted before. So let's say somebody says something to you, or somebody cuts you off. Let's say this, cuts you off in traffic. We might in the past have gone, we swear, we yell, or we just get angry at the person, but we get angry in the car, we yell. Anyhow, same outcome that we yell. So the external outcomes are that we're actually blessing that person. We say out loud, I bless that person. I'm not sure why they cut me off, but I bless them anyway as they go on their way. So I will say though, that takes a lot of character to be able to say, I bless you, even though you just cut me off. But that's an example where that could be shifting. The other question is to ask yourself, what's your why? What's your purpose? What gives you joy and what makes you wake up every day? My purpose is to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in the next 10 years. And that is by giving each person that I encounter, first of all, I make them feel seen, heard, and celebrated as much as I can, but also offer communication tips when I'm in a person's presence. It's not like I'm going around giving, hey, let me give you some tips, but really thinking about the greater purpose, just as an example for me, is in my work to provide confident communication strategies to many women. And my goal is to reach 10 million by 2030. And the other thing though, if we look at this on a day-to-day basis, my why is to encourage people. I want everybody in my presence to feel seen, heard, and accepted for exactly who they are. So that's my why. What is yours? By the way, a good exercise to determine your why, to really help you to prioritize, is to write your eulogy. It might sound a little bit strange, but it is so interesting to do because it really helps you to zero in on what matters. So consider doing that to help you find your why. All right, we're going to wrap up here with writing a letter to yourself. And the template is this. You write it to yourself and you write it as if it's already December of 2025. So here are your sentence prompts. Dear you, say your name there. Dear whatever your name is. What I most want to celebrate this year, what I most want to celebrate this year is some of the moments that shine in my memory from this year are, I would have been really disappointed this year if I hadn't. What made a difference on a daily basis this year was, I'm most grateful for, I made sure to, one thing I wish I had believed at the beginning of the year, I love you. And then sign your name. I'll go through these quickly once again. You write this letter to yourself as if it's December 2025. What I most want to celebrate this year is, some of the moments that shine in my memory from this year are, I would have been really disappointed this year if I hadn't. What made a difference on a daily basis this year was, I'm most grateful for, I made sure to, one thing I wish I had believed at the beginning of the year, I love you. Well, that is a wrap on your best year yet. I'm excited to hear how this goes for you. I wish you an incredible rest of 2024, and we will see you in 2025. Always remember that you can go to my website and grab your 9 words to avoid and what to say instead for those of you that want to sound more credible and confident. I also would love to hear from you. Send me an email. Tell me what stood out for you in this exercise of your best year yet. And you can also take the confidence cocktail self-assessment to assess yourself on 8 ingredients that roll up to becoming a clear, compelling, and credible communicator. Looking forward to seeing you in 2025.
If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.